Replacing the engine on your Mercedes, used or rebuilt. So we get a lot of discussion about engine replacements, and this is something that happens when you don't take care of your engine, or when the person who owned the car didn't take care of their engine. And so there's some terminology here that we have to familiarize ourselves with first, and in order to figure out the best course of action for each model, we should familiarize ourselves with these terms. So in the category of used engines, we have used engine, unknown condition, don't know what it's like, no compression data, nothing. Usually the budget option, and this can be a good option if you have an older diesel with a cast iron head, or if you have a gas V8 car with an aluminum block, or if you have a really late Mercedes, like something with an M119 engine. Next, we're going to use another term called a used factory replacement engine. So this is an engine that is stamped with the appropriate information by Mercedes to so that you know that at some point it was a factory rebuilt engine that got installed in a car, and then something happened to the car. Usually an idiot was involved. And now you have this probably good used factory motor. And then finally, there's another term I like to use. It's called a used rebuilt engine, where you have an engine that was rebuilt by a company like Metric Motors or by my friend Jim Dean that is available for installation. You have receipts and you know that it was done at some point. And so now with rebuilt engines, we have different grades of rebuilt. Rebuilt, unknown, like we don't know who rebuilt this. We don't know if it was rebuilt right. We don't know what parts were used. We just know rebuilt. Then there's a reputable rebuild and a factory rebuild. So a factory rebuild means that I got it from Mercedes. It came in a crate. A reputable rebuild would be like a Metric Motors rebuild, or what else? There was EMS, Mercedes engines in Portland, before Portland, became a place where people just play guitar in the sidewalk and live in boxes or multi-million-dollar condos. There used to be a thriving Mercedes restoration industry up there, and I've seen a number of EMS engines, and they're great. Then there's also a term we use called a partial rebuild, where we take an engine that is, kind of tired and re-ring it and change some bearings and put maybe put some valve guides in it, and that could be a full rebuild, but it could be a partial rebuild if you're dealing with a diesel. So we're going to look at some of these options. So a really good rebuild, first of all, starts with using your original engine. You don't take a core, you take the devil whether it ran low on oil or the head cracked, if it's an OM603 or something, and send it to a company like Metric or another qualified source that can prove that they're competent and have the literature and tools to rebuild Mercedes engines, and actually address all of that engine's problems during the rebuild. So that's what I would say is my gold standard. That's what I've done on a lot of my own personal cars, like my 280 SE 4.5. When I did that rebuild, I needed a crankshaft, so I found a new old stock crankshaft, and I let Jim, my machinist, who's qualified to do this kind of work, handle the rebuild. Now, another option with rebuilds, of course, is to order a rebuilt engine and swap it in. So you can order an engine from Metric Motors and just put it in if you don't care about your engine number. I personally care a lot about the engine number. So please, I'd rather just wait 6 months and get my original engine done. Now, another great way to repower your Mercedes if something bad happened of course, is with a decent used engine. So it's ideal to hear a used engine running, but if you can't hear it running, you can at least do a static compression test on the ground, pull the oil pan and check for metal debris, and verify that the motor does not have any major other issues like, I don't know, the presence of somebody putting some schmutz in the cooling system to stop a coolant leak. I think if you have documentation that the engine was a reputable rebuild, like a Metric Motors rebuild or something, sure, why not? It's probably okay. If you have documentation that the engine was left, you know, in a car that rusted away but was a Mercedes factory rebuild, it's probably going to be okay because the rebuilds were often better than the original engines. Case in point, motors like the OM615, which was used in the 220D. If you take a 615 912, the original versions of these engines burned a lot of oil. The replacement versions were updated with the rest of the Mercedes diesel line throughout the 1980s with better pistons and rings, better cylinder heads, better oil pumps. And so not only do those engines make a little bit more power, but they had better internals. They ran quieter. They were like an 83 240D with, you know, all the improvements that you'd see by the end of that production line. So one should not rule out a replacement engine if it's a factory rebuild. But for the most part, there are also some cars where you don't really have much of a choice. With 5.6 liter M117 engines, rebuilds are really difficult because of the aluminum blocks, the silicon impregnated aluminum blocks. Sometimes you're better off with those things just finding a used motor. And it takes a lot to kill them, but when they're down, they are down. Same goes with OM617 5-cylinder diesels. There are enough good engines out there to where I'm not going to fault someone for using a used engine as long as they do an oil analysis on it first. So that's something that I really definitely support doing. Anyway, there is hope. You know, always try to pursue the engine, the option that keeps the original engine with the car, but if you can't, try to pick something that you know is going to work, like you have proof that it works, or go with a company that can actually do the work correctly. Please like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this video. And if you have any additional information that I left out in the comments in a short window of time, please leave it for us. And if you're supporting us on Patreon, we really thank you. And I just want to wish one of our old Patreon supporters, Bill Greener, a happy birthday, which was last week, I think. And thank you guys so much for tuning in, and enjoy driving your Mercedes Benz.